Well, good morning once again and welcome to GMU Agenda. I'm Robert Chilabonyonyintono, and today we are going to be looking at the inauguration of George Weah as Liberian's president. What does it mean, first life of Liberia and Africa as a continent in general? Well, this is a former footballer, very successful, a person who made several attempts since 2005 to lead the country, of course failing, having taken him quite 12 good years. Finally takes leadership through, that is a rerun, that is after there was an election, and he failed to achieve the 50 necessary to avoid a rerun, and it was held, and he comes out defeating people to become the president. With me in the studios is the press secretary to the vice president, that is James Mututa, and our very own Monday Akol Amazima to discuss this very important topic and history in Africa as well. To begin with, James, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure having you on GMU Agenda. When we talk about George Weah, one would want to know briefly, who is George Weah?
And the good thing is, morning viewers, good thing about the man, George Weah, I think, and basically why he got most of the support of the people of Liberia is that he was looked at as one of us. You know, there's being in the limelight, but you're not one of us. Now, George Weah, that man who is coming from a very Sheikh background, I think he lost both of his parents at a very tender age. Is he brought up by his grandmother with 11 other children in the extended African family, and he goes to school, which he didn't do very well. I think he stopped at his high school, and then because he had a talent, he joins football, and from football today we are looking at a president. Now, even within that, he outsmarts and he outshines the rest in the football fraternity world over. Not only in Africa, he becomes one of the African best players, but also when he joins the European clubs, he becomes a star. So this is a man we are looking at today as a president of a country, having come from nowhere, at least to somewhere now.
Well, Monday, when you look at George Weah, a person Nelson Mandela one time referred to as the pride of Africa. Let's look at first his journey to politics. He has had attempts, he has failed, he has kept on trying for 12 years. What does this signify?
This signifies patience. Yes, and also it reminds me of an old saying that water meant does not flow. If something is yours, that opportunity can be delayed, but it can never be denied. Because let's look in 2005, he won the first round and only lost in the rerun because he won, but he did not garner the 50+1 to make him an outright winner. That is in 2005. And then when they went for the rerun, actually he lost to the current president, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, which loss he did not really take in good faith because it was a bitter pill for him to swallow and his supporters. But then later he had to cool down. So in 2014, we realized that he runs for Senate against actually the incumbent president's son, that is Robert Sirleaf. And he defeats Robert Sirleaf to become a senator. And so he has been 3 years in the Senate. And when he came out to contest now for the seat, he had to team up with the former wife of Charles Taylor, that is Joel Howard Taylor. So he's somebody who has been building alliances, and he's somebody, as Mututa really did said, some people go to Europe. When they become successful, they forget about Africa. But this is somebody who was there for his own country. During the time when Liberia was under a civil war, he was giving a lot of charity. During that time when Liberia was under civil war, he sponsored the national football team of Liberia. So ideally, he has been there for his country. Yeah.
Well, Mututa, I want us to look at George Weah. Finally, he wins power. and of course, though it was after a rerun, but he garners the majority. That's about 68 point something to win. But let's look at Liberia as a country that is among the poorest in the world, that is having over 80% of the population living below $1 per day, a country that has about 250,000 people that died in the civil war, a country that was struck, I think, around 2014 by Ebola.
Yeah.
So we're taking office right now. What are some of the areas that he should focus on first to see if there is a dramatic change in Liberia?
He has a number of issues that he has inherited. One of them is that he has to create that trust, that people need to trust their government. And this is something which has been eluding the leadership of Liberia for quite some time. That the disparity between the people and the government are not that close. The people no longer have a lot of trust in their government. The other issue he has to address is the issue of the land issue. The land issue is not only a problem in some of the African countries. I think it's becoming a problem all over. When the civil wars stopped in Liberia, a lot of companies came in Liberia needing land to do the infrastructure development, to do the industrialization. But now, I think the transition has not been smooth. That the people are losing land. They think that the land is being grabbed for development. The other issue has to do is the economy.
As you can see on your screen, that is Liberia, some of the images of this country, one of the poorest, if you're to talk about countries in the world. And really, this is a former footballer. He has had political experience. Yes, we must accept when he first came on the scene in 2005, he was seen one as a person who didn't have the academic qualifications. When you look at Sharif, who was from Harvard, then they looked at him. Some called him a baby because he never had political experience. But maybe now, over time, he has been in the Senate. He has been hustling it out there. Do you think he can really take a change that the Liberians maybe want? You know, when you're new, people want dramatic measures. What would be the entry points to create this move? And
of course, the other issue which has to address is corruption. And this is not only the problem in Liberia. Now, the challenge he has is that he has to bring a number of groups together. First of all, he has come in an election which more or less is disputed. Because there is a group, the older group, which believes they thought the vice president will take over as a president. But then the young group, when you look at the general trend of elections, is that the young population was appealing more to the young population, and of course the other group of the older parties that had failed to make it into leadership. But of course, also given the history of this particular country, that there are a lot of social movements within Liberia. Now, the other problem that he will have is that, having been much as has been in the Senate for this time, it is also challenging that he has not been in public service. And he has to head a government which is full of technocrats. But it is also true that he does not possess a lot of know-how on how to manage the technocrats. But I guess he will have a team to work with that will help him do that. But all said and done, I think, I believe, given his background, that and a lot of expectations, that he may not do much, especially in his first 5 years, 6 years of his leadership. At least there will be many challenges that you'll have to address, and that will mean it is going to affect, even if he will be have a chance again to run and win the next elections.
Monday, looking at George Weah's inauguration, of course we know Saturday, that is global, is going to be the talk. A former successful footballer being then sworn in as a head of state. But what does this mean to the African continent? We see he takes over a country torn apart by decades of civil war, actually back to back. was, and now here he has made it up.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that his personal history is a history of hard work, because having grown up in the slums of Monrovia, single-handedly he develops his career. He becomes a serious footballer, that is in Liberia, then goes on the international scene, he becomes a serious footballer. So that alone, his own story is a story of hard work. Then the other issue is that his own story is that story of somebody who has a passion for the development of his people, because he would sacrifice whatever he used to get from his own talent to support his own country. Then the other issue that I also want us to look at, therefore, is that where there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah.
So he has that will to work for his people. He has that will to make sure that his people become better people. But above all, is that let us look at, because George Weah is not coming into power by riding on a single party. No, his is a coalition. I would call it a coalition government, because he is from the Congress for Democratic Change. His running mate, who is the former wife of Charles Taylor, that is Joel Howard Taylor, is from the National Patriotic Party. And a number of his supporters come from these other small parties. So he's coming up with a coalition government, implying that it's an all-inclusive, bringing these other people on board. Therefore, yes, they may not have the experience per se, but let's look at Charles Taylor's wife, who was First Lady for about 15 years. So she also comes with that.
Whose husband is serving a sentence.
Yes,
that is
former husband.
former husband serving a sentence.
Yes,
A warlord as well.
Yeah,
so
but
hope
still,
this warlord experience does not extend as well there.
You see, running government, whether you run the government as a dictator, as a lord, whatever, but as long as you've been there, you have some experience. Because being in power for 10 years and being a first lady for 10 years, that means you are closely watching how certain things. So there is that bit of experience. Now, like Mrs. Taylor, that is Joel Taylor, has been saying, that a successful footballer is a team player, because you only score goals if you are a team player. So implying that it is that skill of teamwork that George Weah has been exhibiting on the pitch that people are expecting of him when it comes to running government. Then lastly is that my biggest worry with him is how to sustain the people's expectations. You see, Chirabo, it is easier to become successful when you come into power, when people have little expectations from you, and then you only surprise them with very, for example, in Tanzania, Magufuli, people didn't have a lot of expectation because they didn't know him. But within the first day they were, say, hey, you mean this man is proving to be this? So, but when they have high expectations of you, it is really very, very difficult. I think that is the biggest challenge is going to have, sustaining the expectations, not of Liberians, but of the whole world, because he comes in when he's such an international celeb. Yeah.
Well, we are looking at the inauguration of George Weah, that is a former football hero to the people in Liberia and also Africa, because by the time Madiba Nelson Mandela refers to you as the pride of Africa, and his achievements in football, no Africa actually has made those records so far, winning, you have about 2 international recognitions there in the world of sports. And the man who comes and wins in a rerun with 61.5%, that is of the total votes cast, with a turn-up of 98.1% to lead the country. In the first, things weren't easy for him because he got 38.4%, while the other one got around 28, that is 0.8%. So of course he didn't get the 50%, and was automatic. There was a rerun, which was delayed because of court cases here and there, saying there were irregularities, malpractices. But finally on December 26th, it happened, and the rerun was carried out. We want to look at now the bigger picture of Africa as a continent. James, Liberia, there are other countries that there could be similarities. You see, they have come from afar to have these elections the way they have come. Any lessons for other African countries?
Yeah, first of all, I think it is a very big lesson for the rest of Africa. As you may now know, even the neighbors of Liberia alone are also crippling with a lot of political uncertainties. But the lesson is that, well, losing an election is not a problem. It may be. People who are running consistently one time may have it. But the bigger picture is that, look, Africa must move on. Because I think this is one of the most, is the only successful transfer of power, peaceful, since 1944. So this is a very big lesson for Africa to pick. But at the same time, is that Africa is changing. That we can have people with different views and different ideologies coming together and agreeing on something. Because when you look at the former First Lady and where they don't have much in common. This one is a footballer. This one was a businesswoman who became a First Lady, but you know, they have said, I think there is something good for us to work together for the good of Africa, for the good of Liberia. But at the same time, like you said, I think the problem now is going to be how a footballer can translate the same experience into managing public affairs. How he brings together, you know, where a personality of where is a very short-tempered person. And if you cross his line, trust me, you'll have trouble. And then the First Lady is also a very radical woman.
Radical and shrewd.
Yeah, and shrewd. So now he has a very powerful woman in the name of the vice president, and a very shrewd woman, a very strong business woman. And where personality may be a very short-tempered person, but is also a very passionate person when it comes especially to issues of poverty, issues of development. So these are the forces that he has to contain. And of course the other people in the parties who would want to revenge on the just gone out ruling party, to also punish them for their own mistakes. You know, this Salif has also been presiding over a very corrupt government. And part of her problems was that the government actually she was leading was a very corrupt government. And that's why when the issue of Ebola settled in, I think she took it personally as a mother, as a woman. I think it was a very strong weight on her, and no wonder the way she behaved when it came to this election is that some of the things that she was expected to do as a head of state and in support of her political party and the persons she was supposed to support, she sat back and said, no, let's see what people will decide. Because you remember the vice president, the outgoing vice president, the defeated presidential candidate, was also a minister, and having been a minister, the number of issues, I think they had internal disagreements with the president. Although he had run on her ticket as a running mate for the 2 consecutive times, I think somehow she was not so comfortable with him as a leader, next leader.
Monday, finally, as we come to the end of the show, key lessons for African countries to learn from Liberia and the inauguration of George Weah.
Well, first of all, the key lesson is that one is that as long as we work hard, we can always get where we want to be. That is one. We must always be very, very patient. Then 3 is that George Weah, because I want to give an example, the relationship that was there between Weah and Charles Taylor, that at one time George Weah would not even freely visit Monrovia. Yeah. That he would sponsor the team, join the team to go and play with it outside. without actually going to Monrovia. Yeah. But now here, you find that his running mate is the former wife of the very person who was persecuting him. So that is reconciliatory.
Maybe the wife was not part of the persecution.
But she was the first lady. So those are our issues. So I believe he comes in with a message of reconciliation, and which is very, very, very key to African politics. Yeah. That we must always be ready to work with our former enemies. We must be always ready to work with our former adversaries.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you as part of GMU Agenda this morning, as we've been looking at the inauguration of George Weah, former football star, now president-elect and president of Liberia. For God and my country, from the rest of the team, the technical crew, our producer and our director, Ramadan Dungu, wishing you a lovely weekend. Up next is Business Today. Please stay with us and a lovely weekend.